No place encapsulates Jerusalem's turbulent history quite like the Temple Mount.
Picture this. You're standing in front of the most contested piece of real estate on Earth, 37 acres where three religions collide, where starting a simple archaeology dig could literally start a war. For over 150 years, scientists have been dying to know what's buried beneath this ground, but nobody, and I mean nobody, has been allowed to dig, until now. In 2024, a team of researchers found a way around the rules. They didn't use shovels or pickaxes. They used something far more powerful, artificial intelligence that could see through solid rock. And what they discovered 30 feet underground made hardened scientists break down in tears. A sealed chamber, untouched for 2,500 years, with artifacts inside that might just prove one of history's greatest mysteries. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem isn't just another archaeological site. It's a powder keg wrapped in history, where three major religions converge on 37 acres of contested ground. For Jews, this is where Solomon built the first temple, the dwelling place of God on earth. Inside that temple was the Holy of Holies, a room so sacred that only the high priest could enter, and only once a year on the Day of Atonement. If you accidentally stepped on the wrong stone, you could be walking on the most holy ground in existence without the proper purification. That's why many religious Jews won't even set foot on the mount today. For Muslims, it's Haram al-Sharif, where Prophet Muhammad began his miraculous night journey to heaven. The Golden Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque have crowned this hill for over 1,300 years. To them, any outside digging is seen as a direct attack on their faith. For Christians, it's where Jesus walked, taught, and drove the money changers from the temple courts. Every stone here echoes with biblical history, but here's the catch: nobody's allowed to dig. For over 150 years, this has been archaeology's greatest frustration. Back in the 1860s, British officer Charles Warren tried to explore the area by digging tunnels around the mount. Working by lamplight with ropes and primitive tools, he discovered underground shafts and passages, including the famous Warren's Shaft that some believe King David's soldiers used to sneak into ancient Jerusalem. But Warren hit the same wall every archaeologist faces. The mount itself remained absolutely off-limits. Why? Because every shovel of dirt is politically explosive. Every broken pottery shard could spark international incidents. Religious authorities from all three faiths guard the site jealously. Since 1967, Israel controls security, while the Islamic Waqf manages daily religious affairs, an uneasy balance that could shatter with a single wrong move. One misplaced excavation could trigger riots, protests, or worse. Governments have fallen over less sensitive archaeological disputes. So for decades, archaeologists could only dream about what lies beneath. Then in 1999, something unexpected happened. Construction workers on the Temple Mount were expanding an underground mosque. They needed to remove tons of ancient soil, and they did it without any archaeological supervision. Picture this: dump trucks rolling up to one of the world's most sacred sites, loading up with dirt that could contain artifacts from King Solomon's time, and hauling it away like construction debris. For archaeologists watching from the sidelines, it was like watching someone throw away the crown jewels. Truckload after truckload of potentially priceless artifacts was dumped in the Kidron Valley like garbage. We're talking about 9,000 tons of soil, enough to fill several Olympic swimming pools. Inside that dirt could be pottery touched by biblical prophets, coins from Jesus' time, or artifacts that could solve historical mysteries dating back 3,000 years. For archaeologists, it was heartbreaking. Thousands of years of history tossed away, but two determined researchers, Gabriel Barkay and Zaki Dvira, had an audacious idea. If we can't dig at the Temple Mount, maybe we can study what was thrown away. In 2004, they launched the Temple Mount Sifting Project. They brought the dumped soil to Emek Tzurim National Park and set up the world's most unusual archaeological dig. Instead of excavating in pristine conditions, they were essentially going through ancient garbage. But here's what made it special. They opened it to everyone. Volunteers from around the globe came to sift through buckets of dirt, searching for artifacts grain by grain. Families on vacation, school children on field trips, tourists from every continent, Suddenly, ordinary people were holding pieces of history in their hands. The process was painstaking. Volunteers would pour soil through wire mesh screens, rinse it with water, then examine every pebble and fragment with magnifying glasses. Most of what they found was just rocks and dirt, but occasionally, someone would spot something that made their heart skip a beat. What they found was extraordinary. Over 500,000 artifacts spanning 3,000 years of history. Ancient coins bearing the faces of long-dead kings, pottery fragments that once held food for temple ceremonies, jewelry that adorned women in biblical times, and clay seals bearing Hebrew names mentioned in the Bible. One volunteer found a tiny ivory comb with one of the earliest known Canaanite texts carved into it. Just a simple message about removing lice from hair. But this mundane inscription offered an intimate glimpse into daily life millennia ago, proving that even the most ordinary objects can be extraordinary time capsules. But the biggest breakthrough came between 2021 and 2024, when scientists turned to artificial intelligence. If they couldn't dig, maybe they could see through the Earth itself. Ground-penetrating radar has been around for decades. It sends electromagnetic signals deep underground, and when those signals hit something solid, like a wall, a chamber, or buried artifacts, they bounce back. Think of it like echolocation for archaeologists. But processing this data used to be slow, imprecise, and required massive amounts of human interpretation. Enter AI. By feeding artificial intelligence decades of historical maps, architectural knowledge, and radar data, researchers could suddenly see beneath the Temple Mount with unprecedented clarity. The AI could process thousands of radar readings in minutes, identify patterns humans might miss, compare modern scans with century-old British surveys, and reveal structures hidden for thousands of years. The same technology had already found hidden chambers in Egypt's pyramids and discovered lost Mayan cities buried under jungle canopies. But applying it to the Temple Mount was different. The stakes were exponentially higher. Here's how it worked. The team used British Mandate-era maps from the 1920s and 1930s, when engineers had documented some of the Mount's known tunnels and cisterns. They fed this historical data into the AI, then compared it with new radar scans. When the AI found matches between old maps and new scans, they knew the technology was working accurately. But more importantly, when the AI detected structures that weren't on the old maps, they knew they'd found something new. The results were absolutely mind-blowing. What the scans revealed shocked everyone involved, and I mean everyone, from hardened archaeologists to government officials who had to be briefed on the findings. What they saw beneath the Temple Mount wasn't just random ancient construction. It was evidence of sophisticated planned development spanning thousands of years, layer upon layer of human history, perfectly preserved under the sacred ground above. The first discovery was a Byzantine chapel from the 4th century. Christians had carved a sacred space deep beneath the mount, complete with stone crosses and Greek inscriptions. It was a reminder that this hill had been holy to multiple faiths for centuries. But beneath the chapel, something far older emerged. Massive ashlar blocks, precisely cut stones used only in the most important buildings. Their style and size matched exactly with construction from King Solomon's era over 2,500 years ago. These weren't random rocks. They were foundation stones of monumental architecture, laid before Rome was even a power, before Alexander conquered the world. Then came the water system, and it was mind-blowing. The radar revealed a vast network of channels, cisterns, and aqueducts weaving beneath the mount like arteries. This wasn't just about drinking water. The engineering was far too sophisticated, too precisely planned. The system included flow controls, pressure regulators, and storage reservoirs that would be impressive even by today's standards. Chemical analysis of mineral deposits proved some sections dated back to the 8th century BCE, the height of the First Temple period. Why such an elaborate water system? The answer lies in ancient worship. Temple ceremonies required enormous amounts of water for ritual cleansing, sacrificial, washing, and purification rites. This underground network was designed specifically to serve the sacred practices described in religious texts. At the center of it all, the scans detected a large ceremonial basin with traces of ancient ash, evidence of sacrificial rituals that once took place above. But the most stunning discovery was yet to come. Near the southern boundary of the mount, AI detected something that made the research team go pale. A perfectly round chamber, 10 feet across, carved directly from bedrock and sealed for millennia. The entrance was hidden behind a stone wall that showed no signs of disturbance. No cracks, no evidence of later construction. This chamber had been sealed since ancient times and forgotten by history. Inside, the scans revealed objects that seemed frozen in time, like a photograph from the distant past. A stone basin sat at the chamber's center, carved from a single block of rock. When they analyzed the residue inside, they found traces of sacrificial ash, evidence that this wasn't just any storage room, but a place where sacred rituals had taken place. The basin lay clay oil lamps, their shapes immediately recognizable to experts. These weren't just any lamps, but specific types used in the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, during the height of the First Temple period. Some still bore traces of ancient soot on their spouts, proof that they had once flickered with flame. In this underground sanctuary, fragments of incense still clung to the chamber floor, aromatic resins that had once carried prayers toward heaven. The scents that once filled this space during ancient ceremonies were still there, molecularly preserved. In the stone, small offering tokens lay scattered about like breadcrumbs from history, personal mementos left by ancient worshippers. Some were shaped like miniature vessels, others like flat discs inscribed with symbols. Each one represented someone's personal connection to the divine, a prayer made physical and left behind in stone. But the most incredible find was carved into the wall itself, an inscription in Paleo-Hebrew, the ancient script used in Israel before the Babylonian exile. The letters were faint but unmistakable, carved with the careful precision of someone who considered this a sacred act. When scholars translated the inscription, their hands shook. It spoke of divine presence, language that perfectly matched biblical descriptions of the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctuary of Solomon's temple. The Holy of Holies was the most sacred space in ancient Judaism, a room where Jewish tradition says God's presence literally dwelt on earth. Only the high priest could enter, and only once a year on the Day of Atonement, carrying incense and the blood of sacrifices to make atonement for the entire nation. Could this sealed chamber be connected to that most sacred of spaces? Could they have found physical evidence of the room where heaven and earth were said to meet? The scientific analysis was overwhelming. The clay lamp's shapes and construction techniques matched exactly with artifacts from the First Temple period. Geological testing proved the limestone blocks came from quarries active during Solomon's reign in the 10th century BCE. The Paleo-Hebrew inscription used grammar and letter forms consistent with texts from the same era found at other archaeological sites. This wasn't later construction built over older ruins. This chamber was ancient to its very foundations. For the first time in history, physical evidence was supporting the biblical accounts of Solomon's temple. The chamber contained exactly what you'd expect from active temple worship: ritual basins, ceremonial lamps, incense for prayers, and sacred inscriptions proclaiming God's presence. The impact was staggering. For archaeologists, it represented one of the most significant biblical discoveries ever made. For believers, it was validation that their sacred texts weren't just stories, but historical records carved in stone and clay. This discovery changes everything we thought we knew about ancient Jerusalem. It proves the Temple Mount wasn't just a symbolic holy site. It was an active center of worship, exactly as described in religious texts. The sealed chamber offers a time capsule from one of history's most important periods. Those oil lamps once flickered in darkness 2,500 years ago. That incense once carried prayers toward heaven. Those inscriptions once proclaimed divine presence to ancient worshippers. Yet many questions remain unanswered. What other chambers lie hidden beneath the mount? What artifacts might they contain? Could there be even more direct evidence of Solomon's temple waiting to be discovered? The chamber remains sealed, visible only through digital scans. Opening it would require permissions that may never come, given the site's political sensitivity. But in many ways, that's not the point. This discovery proves that science and faith don't have to be enemies. Technology has given us a window into the past without disturbing the sacred ground above. The Temple Mount has guarded its secrets for thousands of years. armies have marched across its surface, empires have risen and fallen around it. But beneath the political tensions and religious divisions, history waited patiently in darkness. Now, thanks to artificial intelligence, those ancient stones are finally speaking. They're telling us that beneath one of Earth's most contested places lies evidence of humanity's longest conversation with the divine. The sealed chamber sits in silence, just as it has for millennia. Its entrance remains closed, its artifacts untouched by human hands, but its message rings clear across the centuries. Some stories are too important to be lost to time. Think about it. In our age of space exploration and quantum physics, our most profound discoveries about the past are happening right beneath our feet, and the most sacred mysteries of human history are being unlocked not by shovels and brushes, but by algorithms and artificial intelligence. What do you think? Could this chamber really be connected to Solomon's temple? Are we looking at physical proof of biblical history, or just another ancient room with religious significance? Let me know in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on this, and if you're as fascinated by these archaeological discoveries as I am, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There are more incredible stories like this being uncovered every day, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Until then, remember, history isn't just in textbooks. It's right beneath our feet, waiting for the right technology to bring it back to light.